There's a kind of silence that doesn't just fill the room, it fills your chest. It wraps around your soul. It whispers lies when no one else is speaking. And that's where he was, alone, defeated, tired of waiting for a voice that never seemed to come. He didn't want money. He didn't want revenge. He just wanted to know, God, are you still with me? Because the silence wasn't just quiet, it was heavy. Prayers became sighs, hope became habit, and life, just something to survive. People around him said things like, keep praying, God is testing you. Or worse, maybe it's your fault. But deep down, he wasn't angry at God. He was afraid that maybe God had just stopped seeing him. And maybe you've been there too. Maybe you're there right now. If you are, don't leave. Because this silence is not the end. It's where destiny begins to move in secret. The night it happened, the rain came without warning. No thunder, no lightning. Just an endless curtain of cold falling from the sky. He stood outside, letting it soak through his clothes, almost hoping it would wash something away. The doubt, the fear, the feeling of being forgotten. And then, a voice. Not loud, not even clear, just a whisper. You are not alone. He froze. He looked around. No one. No footsteps, no shadow. Just rain. And that whisper that didn't come from outside him, but from somewhere deeper. It wasn't imagined. It wasn't just hope. It was a knowing. Something inside cracked, tears mixed with rain. And for the first time in what felt like forever, he felt seen. That whisper didn't solve everything, but it did one thing. It woke something up. Not a miracle, not a breakthrough, but a spark. And sparks start fires. The next morning, something felt different. The silence wasn't gone, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was like the silence had purpose now, as if it was waiting with him instead of against him. He made his coffee, sat by the window, and just stared out like he always did. But then, a knock. Soft, hesitant. 3 taps, and then nothing. He froze. Nobody ever knocked on that door. Not in years. Not since before the darkness swallowed everything. He walked slowly, heart pounding louder than footsteps. When he opened the door, there was a man. Older, calm eyes, drenched from the rain that hadn't even started yet. And without introducing himself, the man said, I was sent here. You've been praying for an answer, haven't you? The words cut straight through him. Not because of the message, but because they were the exact words he had whispered the night before. God, are you still with me? The man didn't smile. He didn't sell hope. He just looked at him and said, the silence wasn't to hurt you. It was to prepare you. What comes next? You're not ready for it without the silence. And then, he turned and walked away. After the man walked away, he stood there, wet, trembling, but not from the cold. He didn't know what had just happened. He didn't know who that man was. But something had shifted. He walked back inside and did something he hadn't done in years. He opened the drawer where the letter was hidden. Old paper, folded twice. No envelope. No address. Just a message. Never sent. It was the last thing he ever wrote to his father, the man who walked out when everything fell apart. He never mailed it. He never burned it. He just let it rot with the hope that once lived in it. But now, with hands trembling and heart racing, he unfolded it. The words were messy, raw. A boy begging for answers, a man aching for peace. I'm not angry anymore. I just want to understand why you left, why we weren't enough. I need to know you didn't forget me. And in that moment, he realized, this whole time, he wasn't just waiting for a word from God. He was waiting for a father. The silence wasn't divine punishment. It was a mirror, a space where he could finally hear his own voice crying out for healing. And now, he was ready to be honest. 2 nights later, the storm came back, but this time, it wasn't just rain. It was thunder. It was wind. It was chaos. He sat by the window again, letter still on the table, watching the world fall apart outside, just like it had inside him so many times before. And then, another knock. But this time, louder, urgent, almost desperate. He ran to the door, expecting the same man, but when he opened it, no one was there. Nothing. Just the wind. And the letter on the floor. Not the one he had written, a different one. Folded, clean, dry, in the middle of the rain. He picked it up with shaky hands. No name, no address, just one sentence inside. He never forgot you, and neither did I. He dropped to his knees. Tears fell freely now. Because that handwriting, he recognized it. It was his father's. He didn't know how. He didn't know if it was possible. But something inside him knew. The man who knocked had been carrying more than a message. He had been carrying a bridge between what was and what could still be healed. The next morning felt louder than usual, even without music, even without voices. It was as if something inside him had awakened, like the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was charged. He stepped outside. Same street, same sky, but the world looked new. Not because anything had changed on the outside, but because something had finally changed inside him. Then, his phone rang. A number he didn't recognize. He almost ignored it. But a whisper inside him said, "Pick it up." He did. A pause. Then a voice, older, familiar, cracked like dry earth. "I don't know if you still hate me. I don't even know if you want to hear from me. But I've been trying to find you." His knees nearly buckled. It was him, his father, alive, real. On the line, after all these years. "I don't have an explanation. I don't have excuses. Just, I'm sorry, and I miss you." Silence again. But this time, it wasn't cold. It was holy. He didn't respond right away, not because he didn't know what to say, but because he wanted the moment to last a little longer. The silence had broken, not with thunder, not with fire, but with forgiveness. And that was the sound of heaven opening. They agreed to meet. No big words, no promises. Just a time and a place. An old park they used to walk through, before life unraveled, before the silence began. He got there early, too early. Pacing, sweating, heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. Every second felt like a year. And then, he saw him. Older, slower, hair grayer than he remembered, eyes heavier, shoulders lower. But still, his father. They locked eyes. And for a moment, neither moved. No dramatic music, no rushing into arms. Just the weight of years standing between them like ghosts. He took a step forward, then another, and suddenly, they were face to face. No one spoke. Because in that moment, words would have ruined it. The silence was back, but it was different now. It wasn't cold. It wasn't distant. It was full of things that didn't need to be said. Of memories, of regrets, of longing, and of something neither of them had dared to hope for. Peace. Then the father reached into his coat, pulled out a photo, old, worn, creased from years of being carried. It was him, as a child, laughing, eyes full of light. "I carried this every day," his father said softly. "Even when I was lost, I never forgot who you were." And with that, the silence between them cracked and became healing. Not everything was fixed. Not everything would be. But something that was dead had just come back to life. They sat down on the park bench, side by side. No eye contact. Just presence. The kind of presence that says, "I'm still here, even after everything." Birds chirped. Wind moved softly through the trees, but their silence was louder than all of it. Finally, the sun spoke. Why'd you leave? The father took a breath, long, heavy, because I thought I had nothing left to give, and I was ashamed of the man I had become. He didn't cry. Not yet. Because he had cried those tears alone, for years. The son nodded slowly. Not because he understood, but because he didn't want to carry the weight anymore. I hated you, he whispered, but I missed you more. The father turned. You were the only thing I got right. That's what made it so hard. Then the son reached into his pocket, pulled out the letter, the one he never sent. Trembling, he handed it to him. The father unfolded it, read each line, and when he got to the end, his hands shook, his lips quivered. He looked at his son, eyes filled with tears. You wrote this all those years ago? Yes. And you kept it? Every day. Then, the father broke, not just into tears, but into truth. All the pride melted, all the silence shattered. And what was left? Just a fire, beneath all the ashes. I don't know how to be a father, he sobbed. But if you'll let me try, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. And right there, on that old bench in a forgotten park, something sacred happened. Two broken men, learning how to become whole, together. Days passed. They started meeting more often. Coffee, small talks, slow walks. No pressure, no pretending. Just presence. Healing doesn't come all at once. It comes in pieces. And they were finally picking those pieces up. Then one morning, the son received another envelope. No stamp, no sender. Just his name, handwritten. He opened it, expecting another note from his father, but it wasn't. Inside was a letter, dated nearly 20 years ago, written by a woman. And the first line read, "To the son I never got to meet." He froze. His breath caught in his throat, hands trembling, eyes racing through the words. You were born from a place of pain, but I carried you with love. I prayed for you before I ever held you. And even when I left this world, I never left you in spirit. It was his mother, the one he barely remembered, the one no one talked about. And suddenly it all made sense. The silence, the whisper, the stranger, the letter on the ground, the timing of the call, the sudden appearance of his father. She had never stopped watching. She had never stopped interceding. The letter ended with, "You will find him one day. When the silence becomes too loud, listen, because I'll be the one whispering. And when he shows up, forgive him." That's how we begin again. He dropped to his knees, not from pain, but from understanding. The silence wasn't empty. It was her voice. It was God's timing. It was destiny, arranging everything. Still holding the letter, he sat on the floor, surrounded by memories he never knew he had. How did this letter even find him? How had it survived 2 decades? Who delivered it? He had no answers. But strangely, he didn't need them. Because deep down, he knew. This wasn't just a coincidence. This was designed. Later that night, he met his father again. Same bench, same park. But this time he brought the letter. He handed it over, silently. The father read it. And the moment he saw the handwriting, his hands began to shake. She wrote this. His voice cracked. She wrote this before the accident. Tears welled up. I thought it was lost forever. She told me she was writing it, but I never got to read it. Until now. They sat together, stunned. That letter had traveled through time, carrying a mission to heal, to guide, to fulfill the one promise she made before she died. He will not grow up without love. The father looked at his son. She knew. Even then, she knew I would run. But she also knew I'd come back. She believed in something bigger than my failure. Then he pulled out a box from his coat. Small, wooden, worn. This was hers, he said. She told me to give it to you when you were ready. The son opened it. Inside, a chain with a small pendant, a photograph of the three of them, and a note folded in half. It read, "I'll meet you again one day, in the quiet. Until then, trust the silence." That night, he didn't sleep. Not because he was restless, but because he was awake for the first time in years. He sat with the letter, the box, the memories. Everything that once felt broken was suddenly part of the story. He remembered the boy he used to be, full of questions, full of pain, full of dreams he buried just to survive. But now, something had shifted. He didn't just want to survive anymore. He wanted to build. For the first time, he looked in the mirror and saw more than tired eyes. He saw fire, not a wild fire, not a destructive one, a steady flame, purpose, peace, and a quiet kind of power. The kind of power that comes after you've lost everything and found what really matters. He started writing again, not letters he would hide, but letters he would share. He wrote about grief, forgiveness, faith, and the kind of silence that isn't absence, but preparation. If you're in the middle of silence, he wrote, don't curse it, lean into it, listen. Because silence is where heaven whispers your next step. People began to read his words. They reached out. They cried. They said, "You wrote exactly what I needed to hear." And just like that, his pain became purpose. His story became light. Weeks passed. Life began to bloom again, quietly, steadily. He kept writing, meeting with his father, carrying his mother's words like armor. Then one day, while walking through the park, he saw him. The stranger. Same coat. Same calm eyes. Standing beneath the same old tree. As if he'd never left. Their eyes met. No words were needed. But still, the son approached. "Who are you?" he asked, voice steady but curious. "And how did you know where to find me that day?" The man smiled, not with his lips, but with something deeper, like truth wrapped in flesh. "I was sent," he said, "not by mail, not by accident, but by assignment. Assignment. Some wounds don't just need healing, they need unlocking. And I unlock." The son's breath caught. "Why me?" "Because your mother never stopped praying, and heaven never stopped listening. But most of all, because it was time." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small stone, smooth, white, etched with a single word. "Return." You thought silence meant abandonment, but heaven was never gone. It was waiting for you to return, to yourself, to your story, to your calling. Then the man stepped closer. "You are not forgotten. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are chosen." And just like that, he was gone. No footsteps, no goodbye. Just Wayne through the leaves, and peace settling into his chest like a home. He clutched the stone, tears in his eyes, not of pain, but of understanding. The stranger wasn't just a man. He was an answer, a reminder, a messenger. And now, the message was his to carry forward. He went home that night with the stone in his hand and a fire in his heart he had never felt before. The kind of fire that doesn't burn your skin. It burns your fear. It burns the lies you've believed about yourself. It clears the smoke of confusion and shows you who you really are. He sat at his desk, opened his journal, but this time he didn't write a letter. He wrote a vision. "There are others like me," he whispered, walking through silence, drowning in their own unanswered prayers, thinking God forgot them. But what if I could be their stranger? What if I could be the knock on their door? That night, he made a decision. He wouldn't just survive his story. He would share it. He would carry the message forward. He would be the proof that silence doesn't mean abandonment. It means preparation. And pain? Pain was never the enemy. Pain was the seed of the calling He launched a journal project, anonymously at first. Stories from people who had been through hell and come out holy. He called it the Return Letters. People sent stories, hundreds, thousands, from prison cells, from hospital beds, from broken marriages, from silent bedrooms at 3 a.m. And one thing was always the same. They all thought God had forgotten them, until something, or someone, reminded them that he hadn't. And now he understood. This wasn't about healing his past, it was about unlocking the future for others. Late one night, as he organized the letters, he came across something familiar. A torn page, stained, worn at the edges, folded in four like it had been carried in a pocket, or hidden in a place too sacred to touch. He opened it slowly. The handwriting was his, but not the man he was now, the boy he used to be. At the top of the page, in shaky, uneven letters, it read, "God, please don't forget me." That was it. No verses, no theology, just a cry. A broken, childlike cry, sent into the silence years ago. He ran his fingers across the page. Tears welled up in his eyes, because now he could finally see that single prayer was the spark, the whisper in the rain, the stranger at the door, the phone call, the letter, the healing, the calling, all of it had begun with a whisper. "God, please don't forget me." And heaven had responded, not with noise, but with orchestration, bit by bit, thread by thread, scene by scene. Until now, he was no longer the forgotten. He was the answer. He folded the page gently, placed it into a frame, and hung it above his desk. So every time he wrote, every time he shared someone else's pain, every time he lit a fire in someone else's soul, he would remember, God heard me, even when I couldn't hear him. The project grew faster than he expected. People from around the world, some with shaking hands, some with breaking hearts, sent their stories. And he read them all. Every line, every confession, every cry that echoed his own. Some stories ended in restoration. Some were still stuck in the middle. Some had no closure at all. But they all had one thing in common. They were still waiting. One night, unable to sleep, he sat down at his desk, stone in one hand, pen in the other, and began writing not another post, but a letter. To the one still in the silence, he began. "I don't know your name. I don't know your story. But I know the weight you're carrying, because I've carried it too. If you're still waiting for a sign, let this letter be it. You are not invisible. You are not cursed. And what feels like a delay may just be heaven building something you can't yet see. I know what it's like to scream into the darkness and hear nothing back. I know what it's like to wonder if your pain matters, but I promise you this. God hasn't forgotten you, and he never will. One day, the silence will break, maybe with a whisper, maybe with a knock, maybe with a letter like this one. But when it does, don't run from it. It's not the end, it's the beginning." He finished writing, folded the letter, and left it on a bench in the same old park. No name, no address, just written on the outside, "To the one who thinks it's too late." And as he walked away, the wind picked up, carrying the paper, carrying the message, carrying the hope. Days turned to weeks, and weeks into seasons. But something had changed in the atmosphere around him, not just in his life, but in every life he touched. The pain didn't disappear, but it no longer owned him. The silence wasn't gone, but now it had meaning. One day, as he walked through the park where it all began, he saw someone sitting on the same bench, head down, hands shaking, eyes lost. And in that moment, he didn't hesitate. He sat beside them, offered no advice, no sermon, just presence. After a long pause, the stranger whispered, "I just need a sign. Something. Anything." He smiled, reached into his coat, and handed them a folded piece of paper. It was a copy of his letter, the one he had left behind, the one that had once saved him. The stranger read it slowly. Tears fell. Hands covered their mouth. And then, they looked at him, eyes wide. "How did you know?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because some signs don't come with lightning. They come with timing. Some answers don't roar from heaven. They whisper through people. And some miracles sit quietly beside you on a park bench. He walked away, heart full. Not because he had fixed anything, but because he had become the proof that heaven always answers. Not always with what we ask, but always with what we need. And as he disappeared into the golden light of the setting sun, a soft breeze passed through the trees, and the wind carried something sacred. Not a shout, not a thunderclap, just a sound so quiet, you'd miss it if your heart wasn't listening. The sound of heaven, finally opening.